It wasn't a shout. It wasn't a fight. It was a short, cold phrase, thrown like a knife in the middle of the kitchen. "Your diabetes exhausts me." He said that while I was measuring my blood sugar, while I was trying to keep my body upright, my mood stable, the schedule in check, and my coffee sugar-free, while I was trying not to pass out, he was getting tired. But he wasn't tired of everything, because on the other side of the wall, there was someone he seemed to never tire of. The neighbor, the one who greeted us with sweetness, who brought me cake, with sugar, of course, the one who praised his clothes and asked, "How is she today?" with a smile that I thought was kind, but was invasive. I took a while to realize, not because I'm stupid, but because when we love, we prefer to trust. And I trusted, even with the short outings, even with the long showers, even with the exchanged smiles, until he didn't come back. He left a note, didn't even have the courage to speak looking into my eyes. He said he needed lightness, life, someone without diseases, as if I had chosen this, as if taking care of my health was a burden he carried out of love, and not a basic responsibility of someone who swears to love. The neighbor, she didn't deny it. She said it just happened, as if love was a stumble and not a betrayal. But what hurt the most wasn't that he left. It was that he blamed me for being sick, for not being easy, for needing insulin, as if my body getting sick nullified the value of my soul, as if love was only for the easy days. I remember the day I received the diagnosis. I was 37 years old, a normal life, a 12-year marriage that seemed solid, a job I liked, plans for the future, our future, until the symptoms started, the constant thirst, the fatigue that wouldn't go away, the blurry vision that I thought was just a need to change my glasses. "Type 1 diabetes," said the doctor, with that neutral voice they use to deliver life-changing news. "Your pancreas has stopped producing insulin. You'll need daily injections for the rest of your life." Ricardo was by my side in that office. He held my hand. He said we would face this together, that it wasn't the end of the world, that medicine had advanced a lot, that he knew people who lived normally with diabetes, all the right phrases, all the supportive gestures expected from a husband. In the first few months, he was really there. He learned with me about carbohydrate counting. He helped me calculate insulin doses. He was attentive to signs of hypoglycemia. He even changed some eating habits in solidarity, although I always said it wasn't necessary. "We're in this together," he would repeat, and I believed him, because I wanted to believe him, because I needed to believe him. But gradually, almost imperceptibly, something began to change. First, there were small irritations when I took too long choosing what to eat at a restaurant, mentally calculating the carbohydrates in each option. Then, impatient sighs when I said I needed to check my blood sugar before we went out. Bored looks when I talked about new studies or treatments I had researched. "Is this all you talk about now?" he asked one night, after I mentioned a new insulin that my doctor had told me about. I stayed silent, surprised by the harshness in his voice. I didn't realize it at the time, but that was the first clear sign of what was to come. The first crack in the "we're in this together" facade. It was around that time that Sandra moved into the apartment next door. 40 years old, divorced, childless, hair dyed a blonde that wanted to look natural, but wasn't. Nails always impeccable. The type of woman who always seems ready for a photo, even when she's just taking out the trash. In the beginning, I thought that her kindness was just that, kindness. She brought small gifts when she returned from a trip. She offered help when she saw me arriving with groceries. She asked about my health with apparent sincere concern. "How lucky you are," I said to Ricardo one night. "Most men complain about gossipy neighbors, and you got one who is helpful and discreet." He agreed distractedly, his eyes fixed on his phone. I should have noticed it then too, the way he avoided my gaze, how he quickly changed the subject. Things gradually got worse. My diabetes became harder to control. The stress at work, the hormonal changes, and maybe even the tension starting to settle into our marriage. Everything affected my glucose levels. There were more episodes of hypoglycemia, some scary. Twice, Ricardo had to assist me in the middle of the night when I woke up disoriented, sweating, and trembling. The second time, after the crisis passed, when I was feeling better, with a glass of juice by my side and my levels returning to normal, I saw something in his eyes I had never seen before. Resentment. "Sorry," I murmured, still weak. "I know this wakes you up, disrupts your sleep." "It's not that," he said, but didn't elaborate. He went back to bed, turned his back, and pretended to sleep. But it was that. It was exactly that. It was the exhaustion of dealing with a wife who had needs he hadn't anticipated when he said, "in sickness and in health," before the justice of the peace. It was the burden of a responsibility he hadn't chosen, but was embedded in the package of married life. The following week, I noticed that he began to go out more, always with plausible excuses, a happy hour with colleagues, a project that needed to be finished at the office, a friend who was in town and wanted to meet him for a beer. I believed, or pretended to believe. I ignored the small signs, the different perfume, the messages he hid, the calls he took in another room. Sandra stayed close, more and more present. She brought food when I wasn't well, always something I couldn't eat. Curious, isn't it? She offered to pick up medicine at the pharmacy. She was always available when Ricardo needed help taking care of me. "You guys are lucky to have me as a neighbor," she said once, with that smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I can't even imagine what you'd do without me." It was that afternoon in the kitchen when everything exploded. A normal day. I was sitting at the table, preparing my insulin shot, when Ricardo walked in. He watched in silence for a few seconds, then said that phrase. Simple, direct, devastating. "Your diabetes exhausts me." I looked up, syringe still in hand, alcohol swab in the other. I searched for something in his face. Regret, maybe, or at least some awareness of the impact of those words. I found nothing but a coldness I had never seen before. "What did you say?" "You heard me," he replied, opening the fridge as if he had commented on the weather. "I'm tired of all of this. The emergencies in the middle of the night, the doctor's appointments, the constant care, your obsession with food, schedules, medications." "Obsession?" I repeated, incredulous. "Ricardo, it's not an obsession. It's survival." He shrugged, grabbed a beer and closed the fridge. "Call it whatever you want. All I know is that this isn't what I signed up for when we got married." I stayed silent, absorbing the blow, trying to process that my husband was essentially saying that my disease, something I didn't choose, something I fought against daily, was an inconvenience to him, a burden he hadn't agreed to bear. "In sickness and in health," I finally said, my voice steadier than I expected. "That's exactly what you signed up for." He took a sip of beer and looked at me with something close to pity. "That's for the movies, Helena. In real life, people have limits." 3 days later, he didn't come home after work, nor did he answer my calls. When I woke up the next morning, I found the note on the nightstand. "I need some time, some space to think. It's not fair to you or to me to continue like this." I'm at Marcos's place. I'll come back to get my things over the weekend. Marcos was his college friend. He lived across town. I knew the address, the phone number. I could have gone after him, could have called, could have begged, but something inside me, maybe pride, maybe self-preservation instinct, stopped me. Instead, I spent that day reorganizing my medications, checking my insulin supplies, updating my glucose monitoring app, making calls to reschedule appointments that had been set for times when Ricardo would be home to take me. It was like building a fortress, a protection system for the new reality that was dawning, being alone with my illness. It was Sandra who confirmed my suspicions 2 days later. She knocked on my door with that same fake smile, that same look that didn't match her kind words. "I came to see how you're doing," she said. "I heard that Ricardo, well, that you two are taking a break." "Who told you?" I asked, without inviting her in. She hesitated, uncomfortable for the first time since I met her. "He told me." I nodded slowly, the pieces falling into place with a painful clarity. "When?" "Last night, when he was supposed to be at Marcos's place." Her smile faltered. For a moment I saw indecision in her eyes. Deny? Make up an excuse? But then, surprisingly, she opted for the truth. "Look, Helena, this wasn't planned, okay? It just happened. We didn't mean to hurt you." "No?" I asked with a calm I didn't feel. "Then why the cake with sugar, Sandra? Why the questions about my health, about my medications? Why offer to help, to keep an eye on me, when all you wanted was to keep an eye on him?" She had the decency to look ashamed, but only for a moment. "He's not happy, Helena. He hasn't been happy for a long time. You must have noticed." "What I noticed," I replied, holding the door ready to close it, "is that some people confuse hardship with unhappiness, and others like you confuse opportunism with love." I closed the door before she could answer. I leaned against it, my legs suddenly weak, my heart racing. I grabbed my glucose meter out of reflex. Years of diabetes had taught me to check my levels in moments of stress. 210, mean nan DL. High, as expected. Stress always raised my blood sugar. I prepared a dose of insulin, injected it, and only then did I allow the tears to come. I didn't cry because he left. I cried because of the cruelty of his last words, for the way he turned my daily struggle into a burden for him, for the way he allowed my illness, something that was already hard enough for me, to become the justification for his betrayal. Ricardo came back that weekend, as promised. He came to get his things. He was different, not physically, but in his energy, in his demeanor, as if a weight had been lifted from his shoulders, the weight of pretending he still cared. "Can we talk?" he asked, after filling 2 suitcases with his clothes, his books, his personal items. "About what?" I asked, sitting in the living room armchair, watching him empty our drawers, our life, about us, about what happened, about the future. I gave a dry laugh. "What future, Ricardo? Yours with Sandra, or mine with the diabetes that tires you so much?" He sighed, ran his hand through his hair, a familiar gesture that I used to find charming, but now just seemed theatrical. "It's not fair to simplify it like this. It wasn't just your illness. There were many things." "What things?" "We drifted apart," he said, as if that explained everything. "You changed after the diagnosis. You became different." "Of course I became different," I replied, my voice rising for the first time. "My life changed completely. My body betrayed me. I have to monitor every gram of food that goes into my mouth, every minute of exercise, every drop of stress. I have to prick my fingers several times a day, inject insulin, live with the constant fear of an emergency. How could I not change? He remained silent, looking at the floor. The point, Ricardo, I continued, more controlled, is not whether I changed. It's that you promised to stand by me through the changes. And at the first really difficult one, you not only left, but blamed me for something I didn't ask for, didn't choose, and fight against every day. I tried, he murmured, still not looking me in the eyes. You don't know how I tried. No, you pretended to try. There's a difference. He didn't respond. He closed the last suitcase, adjusted the objects he decided to leave behind. What are you going to tell our friends? I asked. Our families? That you left me because my chronic illness was too inconvenient? Finally, he looked at me. There was something like remorse in his eyes, but not enough. Never enough. I'm going to tell the truth, that we tried, but it didn't work, that we went our separate ways. How convenient, I replied. A truth that isn't true. He grabbed the suitcases, walked to the door, stopped before leaving, turned to me one last time. I'm sorry, Helena. Truly. I hope you find someone who can give you what you need. Me too, I responded, surprising both of us with the firmness of my voice. Someone who understands that love isn't just for the easy days, that health isn't guaranteed, that bodies fail, that promises matter. He nodded, looked away, and left. The door closed behind him with a soft click. Not dramatic, not final, just the sound of something ending in the most mundane way possible. I sat in the armchair for hours. I didn't cry anymore. I didn't scream. I didn't break things. I just sat there, processing what had happened, what it meant, what would come next. At some point, my alarm rang. Time to check my glucose. The familiar sound brought me back to reality. I took out my kit, pricked my finger with the automatic movement of someone who does this multiple times a day, every day, for years. 143 milligranai DL, inside the target range. A small victory on a day of great defeats. That's when I realized I would continue doing this, checking my glucose, injecting insulin, counting carbs, fighting for my health, with or without Ricardo, with or without anyone. The days that followed were a strange mix of pain and liberation. Pain from the end of the marriage, the betrayal, the lies. Liberation from the honesty that finally existed in my life, even if it was a brutal honesty, cruel in its clarity. I had to reorganize everything. Finances, since now it was just my salary. Routine, since there was no one else to share the chores. Health plan, since I was on his. Even my emergency kit for hypoglycemia needed to be reconsidered. Who would I call now if I had a serious crisis? My sister was the first person I told the whole truth. Not the edited version Ricardo was probably spreading among our mutual friends, but the raw truth, that he got tired of my diabetes, that he cheated on me with the neighbor, that he blamed me for being sick. What a son of a bitch, she said, with the indignation that I did not allow myself to feel. Who does that? Who abandons someone because of an illness? Someone who never truly loved, I replied, surprising myself with the clarity of this realization. Someone who confused love with convenience. She looked at me with a mixture of pity and admiration. How are you so calm? I wasn't calm, not really. I was in shock, maybe. Or perhaps I was just focusing my energy on what mattered. Surviving. Not just surviving diabetes, but surviving abandonment, betrayal, the pain of discovering that the man I had shared my life with for 12 years had such a low threshold for in sickness and in health. "I don't have a choice," I replied. "I can't afford to fall apart. My body is already at war with itself. I can't declare war on my mind too." In the months that followed, I created a new routine, one that depended on no one but myself. I learned to manage my diabetes alone, not just the medical aspects, which I already knew well, but the emotional ones. The frustration of hypoglycemia in the middle of an important meeting, the fear of going to sleep and not waking up because of a nocturnal sugar drop, the constant exhaustion of monitoring every aspect of my life, every choice, every movement. I met other people with diabetes in an online support group, people who understood, who didn't need explanations, who didn't look at me with pity or impatience when I needed to stop everything to deal with out-of-control blood sugar levels. That's where I met Marcelo, also type 1, diagnosed in childhood. Unlike me, he had grown up with the disease, had already incorporated it into his identity in a way that I was still learning to do. "Diabetes is a part of me. It's not my whole story," he said in one of our first conversations. "It's like having brown eyes or being left-handed. It's a characteristic, not a sentence." That touched me deeply, because I was still in the stage of seeing my condition as an invader, an enemy, something to be fought and defeated. The idea of accepting it as an integral part of who I was, not my entire identity, but an aspect of it, was revolutionary. Our friendship grew slowly, virtually at first, then with casual coffee meetings. He lived in another city, 2 hours away. He would visit me when he could. We talked about everything, not just diabetes, though it was a recurring, inevitable topic. "Have you ever felt like a burden?" I asked one afternoon as we walked in a park, our insulin pumps discreetly clipped to our waists, our glucose sensors sending data to our phones every 5 minutes. He thought for a moment before answering. "Constantly when I was a teenager. I thought no one would want to date the guy who has to stop everything to check his sugar, who can't eat the same food as everyone else, who carries syringes in his backpack." I nodded, recognizing that feeling. "And now?" "Now I understand that anyone who sees diabetes as a burden is not worthy of my time. It's not about denying the difficulties. They exist. They are real. It's about recognizing that we all have something, some struggle, some condition, some circumstance that makes life more complicated. The difference is that ours is visible, it is quantifiable, it has a name and surname." That conversation stayed with me for days, because Marcelo had articulated something that I was still trying to process after Ricardo's abandonment. That the problem was never my diabetes. The problem was his inability to accept that life doesn't always follow the script we imagine, that bodies get sick, that plans change, that true love adapts. 6 months after Ricardo left, I received an email from him. Formal, distant, as if we were strangers who once signed a contract now terminated. "I am sending the divorce papers," he wrote. "I reviewed them with my lawyer and believe the proposed settlement is fair. If you agree, we can proceed with the process amicably." Attached was a document detailing how we would split our assets, the apartment we bought together, the investments, even the furniture. Everything listed, cataloged, priced. 12 years reduced to an Excel spreadsheet. I didn't respond immediately. Not out of hesitation or hope for reconciliation, but because that email, so cold, so practical, crystallized everything that had happened. The way our marriage, which I believed was based on love and commitment, turned out to be a transaction that could be ended when the terms became inconvenient for one of the parties. When I finally responded, it was with equal pragmatism. I accepted the terms, made some additional small requests, mostly related to the costs of my health insurance plan, which I would now have to enroll in individually at a much higher price due to my pre-existing condition. He agreed without argument, perhaps out of guilt, perhaps because Sandra, with whom I learned from mutual friends he was already living, didn't want to prolong the process. Or maybe because deep down, he knew he owed me at least that much after breaking every promise he had made. The divorce was finalized 3 months later. Quick, painless, on paper. In reality, it was just the formalization of a wound that had already partially healed, leaving a scar that would probably never completely disappear. The day I signed the final documents, I had a severe hypoglycemic episode. I was alone at home, felt the first symptoms, cold sweat, tremors, blurred vision, and managed to check my sensor, 42 mmDL, and dropping fast. I dragged myself to the kitchen, opened the refrigerator with trembling hands, grabbed the orange juice I always kept there for emergencies. I drank straight from the carton, spilling some on my blouse, unable to control my movements. I waited. The minutes dragged on as my body fought to absorb the sugar, to normalize the blood chemistry that insisted on betraying me. Sitting on the cold kitchen floor, back against the cabinet, half a carton of orange juice in hand, I had an epiphany. I had survived. Not just that specific crisis, but everything. The diagnosis that turned my life upside down. The abandonment of those who swore they'd stay by my side. The betrayal that questioned my worth as a woman, as a wife, as a person. And I survived not despite my illness, but partly because of it. Because diabetes taught me resilience. It taught me to deal with the unpredictable, to adapt quickly, to find solutions when everything seems to be falling apart. It taught me that my body, even imperfect, even broken in some parts, was still strong enough to continue, to fight, to recover. In that moment, sitting on the kitchen floor, waiting for the sugar to take effect, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Gratitude. Not for the illness itself. I could never be grateful for a condition that complicates every aspect of my life, but for what it had shown me about myself, about my strength, about my ability to face the unimaginable and keep breathing, keep living, keep finding beauty even in the hardest days. My phone rang, pulling me out of that moment of clarity. It was Marcelo. "Hey," I said, my voice still weak from hypoglycemia. "Everything okay? Just calling to see how it went today," he replied, "with the divorce papers and all." "I just had a crisis," I admitted. "I'm on the kitchen floor drinking orange juice." There was a moment of silence, then, "Are you alone? Do you need me to call someone? Should I come over?" "No, I'm better now. The sugar is rising." I looked at my sensor, which confirmed 67 mmDL and climbing. Out of danger. "Are you sure? I can get the car right now." "I am, but thank you. It's nice to know that there is someone who cares." Another silence, longer this time. "Helena," he finally said, his voice different, softer. "A lot of people care about you. I care. Not as your diabetic friend or your confidant in the support group. I care as a man who is falling for the incredible woman you are, with diabetes, with emotional scars, with everything that makes you, you." I was speechless. Not just because of the unexpected declaration, but the way it came, in one of my most vulnerable moments, when I was literally down, recovering from a crisis, without makeup, unprepared, unmasked, You don't need to respond now, he continued, sensing my silence. In fact, I prefer you don't respond. Not when your sugar is low and your emotions are running high. I just wanted you to know that never, not for a second, have I thought of your condition as a burden. It's part of who you are, and I want all the parts, the easy and the hard ones. Tears came to my eyes, not of sadness, not this time, but of an emotion I couldn't name. Relief, perhaps, or hope, or simply the recognition that maybe, just maybe, Ricardo leaving me wasn't the end of my love story, but just the end of a chapter that needed to finish so a new one could begin. Thank you, was all I could say. For what? For seeing beyond the diabetes, for understanding that it is part of me, but it's not all I am. It's easy to see beyond when what is beyond is so bright, he replied, and I could hear the smile in his voice. I hung up the phone a few minutes later when my blood sugar had already normalized, and my legs had enough strength to lift me off the floor. I walked to the bathroom and looked at my reflection in the mirror, eyes still a little glazed from the hypoglycemia, disheveled hair, orange juice stain on my blouse. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't see a sick woman. I didn't see an abandoned wife. I didn't see a victim. I saw just me, Helena, 38 years old, type 1 diabetic, divorced, survivor, complete in my incompleteness, strong in my fragility,